Welcome back. It's week 2, divisional round time. I'm joined alongside. It's not GiantsNinersDubsSharks, Giants Niners. I swear I'm not even trying to be funny. Like it's still not clicking.
No,
in my
you're
head yet,
good.
but Giants Niners Dubs Sharks. Had to look at your Discord name. Giants Niners Dubs Sharks, and we are back to discuss the divisional round. And before we do, we have to talk about last predictions from last week. And spoiler alert, none of us did very good.
Yeah, I mean, I was 2 for 4. Well, no, 2 and 4. So I was 2 for 6. With the right ones being Tampa Bay over Philadelphia
Mm-hmm.
and Buffalo over Pittsburgh, which I feel like that one was sort of a gimme because Pittsburgh with a backup quarterback. I don't know. I mean, it was a close game actually. Then of course Tampa technically wasn't an upset because they were the home team, but they did have a worse record, so that could have been considered an upset. But I thought, it was a tough week for us. You see the Cowboys, a team that a lot of people thought could go to the Super Bowl, losing in the first round to the 7th seed, the first time that's happened since the expansion of the bracket. And then, I know I thought Joe Flacco was going to, go off and go back to his form from 10 years ago. But when it was all said and done, it was a good week. It was cool to see the Lions and the Rams too. I mean, a 1-point finish. I did pick the Rams, which was not a good pick, hindsight. But here we are. What were your thoughts on your predictions, though? Just looking back.
Well, last year there wasn't a whole lot of upsets. This year there were tons, or so far at least. Just the first weekend, there's a few upsets sprinkled in there. I mean, I also went 2-4, so 2-4-6. Not very good, especially after coming off a year last year where I got every single game right. I will say, though, I did later change. I'm not going to take it on my record because on video I said I had the Philadelphia Eagles over the Bucks. But I do want to say that I put money on the Bucks before the game and won that bet. So it was like a conflict of interest. Was like, yeah, okay,
Fair
I'm
enough.
picking the Eagles. But then last second before the game started, I was like, you know what? I think the Bucks can win it. So let me put some money on them. So at least I had that going for me. As far as the Cleveland Texans game goes, I think it's a surprise to the both of us. I think the Browns, they were coming off a really strong end to their season. They really were. They were balling with Joe Flacco, and then it just abruptly ends in Houston, and they don't even really look
Yeah,
competitive.
not going to help you. I mean, Joe Flacco, in that game, he actually did have more passing yards than C.J. Stroud, and it was a playoff debut for Stroud, so and a lot of guys on that team. So obviously, I didn't think the Texans, they are at home, but I think a team like Cleveland that's been equally as good as the Texans all year, I thought they were going to give them a bigger fight, but I mean, this game wasn't even close. The Texans almost
No.
put up double digits in every quarter. Like it was just like the Cleveland defense that's been so good all year completely fell apart. And yeah, I mean, I think Joe Flacco doesn't throw those 2 interceptions. Maybe it's closer, but utter dominance. I mean, it was just C.J. Stroud throwing dimes. Singletary had a touchdown. I mean, it was a good game for them, and they just kind of like had control of it from the beginning. First quarter was close, but at halftime, you could just see the momentum going one way.
Very impressive first start for C.J. Stroud in his first ever playoff game in his rookie year. Super impressive. He looked like he's been doing it for a long time, and this is just his first year. The Texans, to me, are one of those rare teams. You see this every few years where a frisky team gets into the playoffs and they look really good. Like they're too stupid to know that they're not supposed to be that good at that stage, and they just shock a lot of people. So I feel like the Texans are that type of team, and they could really do a dent in the playoffs this year. I don't really see them beating the Ravens next week. We'll get into that in short enough, but
Yeah.
I mean, it was a surprising win for me. And then you move on to Miami and Kansas City. You had the Dolphins winning. I knew the Chiefs weren't going to lose this game, straight up, and it wasn't even really competitive. And it would have been a lot more of a blowout had Kansas City not gone 2 for 6 in the red zone that game. So, I mean, just a couple
Yeah.
of bad penalties on the Chiefs. Shot themselves in the foot yet again in the red zone. Had to settle for more field goals than they probably would have liked. But when all is said and done, the game wasn't even very competitive. The only points the Dolphins got all game was a Tyreek Hill touchdown from, quite frankly, a bad pass that Tyreek Hill adjusted to and got around the defense for the touchdown. But other than that, the Dolphins were just held short. They looked like people visiting from Florida, which is exactly what it was. They looked like Florida tourists who weren't used to the cold, didn't want to be there, just want to get the hell out of there. You saw Mike McDaniel sprint to the locker room as soon as the clocks hit 0. I mean, it was a damn cold game. And the Chiefs looked pretty good in it. The defense still looks great. The defense looks like a Super Bowl caliber defense. And the Chiefs have now, I think they're 9-0 now in games this year where they score at least 21 points. So, that's a hard formula to beat. You're telling me to stop the Chiefs this year, you need to hold Patrick Mahomes under 21 points, which is pretty rare, especially when the playoffs come around.
Yeah, definitely hard to do. I mean, I honestly should have factored in the weather better in my prediction because I didn't know it was going to be dangerously cold. I did. Obviously, it was going to be cold. It's Kansas City in January, but I mean, I think definitely that was tough for the Dolphins. But even if it was normal weather, I think the Chiefs definitely would have dominated. Tua just did not impress me. Under 200 yards passing, like you said, one all right. Play to Tyreek that really he couldn't be credited for. Rashee Rice though for the Chiefs was really impressive for me. In my opinion. Obviously the Chiefs had struggled with like finding that number one receiver. And, Kelsey had a decent game himself, but, I mean, Rashee Rice averaging over 16 yards a catch and having a touchdown. But, the Chiefs obviously worked the ground game pretty well as well. But I do agree. I think, the Chiefs playing the Bills next, a team that's, I wouldn't say is frisky because they have experience, going into the playoffs, of course, years now with Josh Allen. I think a team that, like, sort of just, like, has this mentality of, screw it. We barely got in. We're the 2 seed. I think it'll be tough for them. We'll talk about our predictions. I'm not going to necessarily say one or the other right now, but I think that for the Chiefs, it's just like adjusting in the red zone, and we've seen that a lot of times this year where the Chiefs have these 4th down decisions, or they have these tough plays where they have to get a few yards, and it's tough for them on the short game. I feel like, but Rashee Rice, great game, hell of a game for him, and Mahomes connected to him well. I thought.
Yeah, just to add on to a few of your points, it was officially, I believe, the 3rd coldest game in playoff history for the NFL. It was top 5 coldest wind chill games. I think the wind chill got up to minus 27. It was nuts. I mean, you couldn't pay me to be there. The tickets were going for like 25 a few hours before the game started. I mean, you go on Ticketmaster, it's like $25 tickets for a playoff game. That's insane. But it was just that cold. Nobody wanted to be there. It was, like you said, dangerous conditions. As far as the Rashee Rice thing goes, like I've been saying, he is the Chiefs' best receiver. And there's a reason that he hasn't really emerged until now, and that's just because he's a rookie, he's still learning the system, and he's still learning how to read defenses, get around guys. But he's emerging at the right time. This is exactly the time that Kansas City needs to have a receiver emerge as a clear number one, and Rashee Rice has done that tremendously. I've watched his development the last few weeks alone, and it's been tremendous. He's gone from the majority of the season being kind of like a screen guy. He was dangerous for the yards after catch because of how many screens he was getting. He was struggling a lot with route running, couldn't really get a lot of separation. He wasn't always running the right way, but now he's starting to look like a legit NFL receiver at the right time. He's looking like a guy who can do a lot of damage in the playoffs. And so it's a very encouraging thing to see if you're a Chiefs fan, to have somebody finally be able to run routes, get open, and catch the ball consistently, because that gives Mahomes an option for some more risky throws, because he's got more faith in Rashee to catch the ball in risky situations instead of Marquez Valdes-Scantling or Kadarius Toney, because they're more likely to tip the pass for interceptions or just straight up not catch it, which they've proven they're doing all year long, and it's just frustrating. Kadarius Toney didn't even play this last game, rightfully so. It was marked up as an injury, but I think he was probably well enough to play. They just didn't want to play him because, let's be real, he's garbage. So it'll be interesting to see. We'll talk about Chiefs and Bills coming up. But speaking of the Bills, absolute whooping against the Steelers. Nobody's surprised. Nobody's surprised at all. The Steelers are a team that, they're limping into the playoffs. Mike Tomlin keeps his ridiculous winning season streak alive just to inevitably lose in the wild card like he does every year. So it's not a surprise. Steelers need to mix things up. They're just not competitive.
Agreed, yeah. And I mean, I think it's funny that this game was even 2 touchdowns. And what does that say about Buffalo? Some garbage time, good play by the Steelers, I guess. But other than that, I completely agree. I think it's a sort of a mindset thing that the Steelers have at this point. It's just get in the playoffs. It's not like let's win the Super Bowl. I feel like they're just running out of steam in the tank. When it's all said and done, it's been that since Roethlisberger. So completely agree on that front. Mason Rudolph, he was all right. I just
Yeah.
think when you're playing in Buffalo, also very very cold game. And the Bills barely got in the playoffs, even with a very good record. I just think they're a team that's hungry. I mean, the Bills are. I think in a lot of facets they're still missing pieces, and the running game for them wasn't great as well. I mean, James Cook has kind of been that number one, and he was all right. He didn't really play that good. And I thought too in a game that was like so cold as well and snowy, I thought run game would be more what they were trying to do, but Josh Allen, he did what he was asked. He only had 9 incompletions, and I mean no one on the Bills really had like that crazy of a game in terms of receiving. I mean Dalton Kincaid was the leading receiver, so it goes to show that's something they'll definitely want to fix. Especially it's going to be tough for them against a really good Chiefs defense. But I mean, good one for the Bills. I mean they played good out the gate. I feel like if the Steelers got a closer start at the beginning of this game, I mean who knows? It could have been a closer game because those 2 touchdowns in the first quarter are what ultimately won them it. But just another good Bills playoff win. Can't really complain.
Yeah, you talk about Kincaid being the lead receiver, and I don't know if it's just me that's noticed this, but I feel like every time Stephon Diggs walks into the stadium wearing the most ridiculous outfit you could possibly fathom, he plays like shit the whole game. He had this cropped,
Yeah,
oversized sweater, I guess, that was it was hideous is what it was, and he played like shit. He was wearing this skirt a few weeks ago, and everybody's like, dude, what the hell are you wearing? And I feel like he's more focused on his fashion than his gameplay. And he's just not been very effective, especially not in this game. I mean, he'll probably step it up against the Chiefs, but who knows? We move on to the real true shocker of the week, which was obviously the Packers not only just defeating the Cowboys, but just whooping them from start to finish.
yeah. I mean, not surprised. I mean, am surprised that because that wasn't my prediction, but I'm not surprised that the Cowboys are, choking once again. I mean, it's the type of thing that's like if they went into the playoffs acting like this was any other game, I feel like they would play better. I just feel like playoff football in Dallas with the Cowboys just never. It's like this overconfidence that they don't have. They always take advantage of that, and we saw that happen. We see that happen every year, basically, at least in the Dak Prescott era, and even in the Tony Romo era for most of it. It's just this overconfidence that they can't compensate for. Dak Prescott, say what you want to say, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, all of that was in garbage time. They were down, 21-7 at half, or excuse me, 20-7, or no, it was 20-14 at half. I mean, at that point, you give up 20 points to the Cowboys, or excuse me, to the Packers at half, a team that's a 7th seed. Yes, Jordan Love played great, but I mean, you're the Cowboys at home, a team that's supposed to possibly win the NFC, and you go ahead and just allow the Packers to walk all over you. I mean, Jordan Love, also playoff debut, 16 of 21. I mean, 3 touchdowns. He was nearly perfect. Aaron Jones had a legacy game as well. So, yeah, Romeo Dubes. I mean, this whole Packers team just like emerged out of nowhere. Who would have expected Romeo Dubes to have 150 yards receiving, and that's on top of 3 other guys having touchdowns on offense. So it's like just crazy that the Packers were able to accomplish this, but I can't say I'm too surprised. I mean, it's Cowboy football in the playoffs.
The Packers were 6-8 at one point, and then they won their last 3 games of the year to clinch the final wild card spot. And the thing that they've proven was that if you sleep on us, we're going to whoop your ass. That's who this Packers team is.
Yeah.
The Chiefs were guilty of that. They walked into Green Bay thinking they had them beat, and they just carved apart our defense all game like no team has all year. And it was just like, what the hell is happening? This is one of the worst defensive games that the Chiefs have played, and it's against a team that's not going to make the playoffs. And then they do make the playoffs out of nowhere. So it's just, they're a sneaky team. They're a very sneaky team. Nobody thought they'd be here, especially 4 weeks ago when they were sitting at 6-8, and Jordan Love, he doesn't look too bad. I know there's a lot of memes out there right now that's like, oh my God, how are the Packers going to have 3 straight Hall of Fame quarterbacks? It's like, well, nothing's proven yet with Love, but I will say the way that he plays now is a hell of a lot more impressive than the way he played 2 years ago. And I think the Packers are just continuing to prove over the course of several years that, hey, if you have a really good quarterback and you draft a new quarterback early, let him sit for a few years. They did it with Rodgers under Brett Favre, and now they did it with Love over Aaron Rodgers. And now Love looks like a much better quarterback now that he's in charge. So it's a good strategy that's working out for the Packers, because this is, if Love stays as good as he looks currently, like he has this last game against the Cowboys, he could be a pretty good quarterback for the years to come. But they're a sneaky team. They're a sneaky team, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's funny how every year the Cowboys, with essentially the same roster, think that, oh, well, it's our year. It's our year. We were just different this year. We look good, and then they inevitably lose in the playoffs.
And they disappear. It's not just losing. It's like everybody that's been playing good or an MVP candidate. I mean, Dak Prescott, he was making a good case for a while. I mean, yeah, 400 yards. I'll say it again. It was in garbage time. They were already losing at that point. Micah Parsons, I mean, he is the biggest trash talker. One of the biggest trash talkers in the league. He has a whole podcast, and he talks about every week what he does and doesn't like. He basically goes and picks and chooses and talks about other teams. But, I mean, he disappeared in the playoffs. You didn't hear anything from him. And that Packers offense was unstoppable. That's why they almost put up 50 points on Cowboys defense that's supposedly elite. And I didn't see it from them that week. And I think this Cowboys team is going to be it's going to be a big offseason for them. Maybe firing Mike McCarthy. I don't know. We'll see.
You got to reconsider the Dak Prescott thing too. I mean, this is his 8th, 9th year with the Cowboys.
Rookie in 2016. Yeah, he was rookie in 2016, so it would have been.
Yeah, so I mean, he's in his
8 years. Yeah,
8th year, which is crazy to think that he's been in the league that long, but he hasn't really proven anything. They've won like one playoff game with him, and it was against the Rams a few years ago. I think that's about it. I could be wrong, but I don't think the Cowboys have really won anything with him. I think it's if you're Jerry Jones, you're looking at the same team year in, year out, and you're starting to think, maybe we just need to shake things up. And if the Cowboys want to win a Super Bowl, they got to do that. They just have to. We'll go ahead and move on to the last 2 games here. We had the Rams over the Lions, which was one of the most fun games, if not the most fun game of them all for the wild card weekend. I had the Rams winning it, and boy, did they almost.
Yeah, I had the Rams too, and I thought, it could go either way. It's a weird situation because you have 2 guys that were traded for each other. You have 2 very good coaches. You have very good offense just in general for both teams, and a lot of young good players like Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions, and then Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams. But for the Rams, I think this is going to be a very good team for a while. I honestly don't care who their quarterback is, because I know Matthew Stafford probably has a few years left in the tank, but I mean, they're setting themselves up for the future. Kyron Williams did not impress me that much, but he also he's been dealt with injury and whatnot. So it's Puka Nacua's game, and Puka Nacua had close to 200 yards receiving. I believe that was a rookie record in the playoffs for a debut or something like that. Broke some sort of record. But the Rams, they need to have a second option, I think, going forward. They have Puka Nacua, they have Cooper Kupp, but Kupp was pretty quiet in this game, and it's obvious that he's dealt with injuries, and I think they need to sign some big receiver to complement Nacua with. But great game. I know the refs sort of got in the way, and that happens every year with whatnot, no calls and all that. And I know the Rams, dealt with that no holding call. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's the Lions' first playoff win in over 30 years. It's big for Detroit. This is their year, to be happy, their year to celebrate. And kind of crazy that the guy who sort of got the short end of the stick in the Stafford trade beat Stafford. It's just a lot of storylines in this one.
Yeah, for sure. The Lions, I still think, are not a Super Bowl team, but they
I agree.
I'm really happy that they won this game. I honestly am. I'm happy for their fan base. It's the first time they've ever seen a playoff win at Ford Field, which opened I think in 2006. It's the first playoff win they've seen since the 90s. Period. I mean, this is a team that's been historically terrible, and so it just makes you feel happy for the fan base because they've been patient. They've been more than patient. They've been waiting a long time for a moment like this, and I'm happy that it was them that got it. But I mean, I don't think Jared Goff is the guy that can get you there over the hump. I mean, I know they got Amon-Ra and Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, but I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. And then lastly, it's technically an upset, but not really. The Bucks not just beating the Eagles, but I mean the game wasn't even really close.
Yeah, I mean, finally have one that I picked right. I just think for the Eagles, it's like we kind of saw we all saw this coming. I mean, it was one of those things where it's like the 11-0. I said it before, the 11-0 Steelers in 2020. They ran out of steam in the playoffs. It was clear that their quarterback, wasn't performing at the same level, not connecting with the coach as well. And I mean, for the Eagles, not even putting up a touchdown is crazy to me. I mean, a team that's supposedly had one of the elite offense of the NFL, AJ Brown and just what they have on offense, DeAndre Swift. Swift only had 34 yards on the ground. I mean, that was ridiculous. Jalen Hurts, had a touchdown, they had one touchdown, excuse me. But if you didn't watch this game, you might think they only had 3 field goals, honestly. It was just one of those games that was just not close at all from the start. And I think for the Bucks, they exposed them. It was good to see Baker Mayfield have an electric game. He had over 300 yards passing, and Rashad White as well had a good game as well. So I think for this Bucks team, similar to the last one, I don't see them going to the Super Bowl or anything like that. But I do think that they're a team that's like, you don't try your best against them, they're gonna put you in your place, and that's why they won the Super Bowl a few years ago. I know it was with Tom Brady and a completely different team, but this Bucks mindset and mentality has not changed. I think that this team is always one of those ones that's like, you don't take them seriously, they're going to put you in your place. And,
Oh yeah.
Clearly the Eagles didn't, because we saw what happened.
Well, we knew the Eagles were going to struggle. No AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, recovering from a dislocated finger, hadn't thrown all week, and it looked like it affected him. It really did, because the Eagles couldn't get anything going other than the one touchdown they had. But it was just the Bucks pretty much dominating the game. And you're right, it was. They are one of those teams that you gotta take them seriously, or else they'll sneak one out and beat you. Baker, he's on and off, but when he's on, and he can win playoff games. It's not the first time he's won a playoff game. So, I mean, he's got the experience. The Bucks defense is still tremendous, and they're a team that is very capable of making the conference championship, I think, next week. And I just want to point out that Nick Sirianni, bro, after barely beating the Chiefs because one of our shit receivers dropped a game-winning touchdown, Nick Sirianni's walking down the tunnel and screaming at the Chiefs fans, all talking shit, acting like he's above all of us. He went 2-6 after that game, and now he's got to watch the Chiefs play in the playoffs from his couch next week. So I just wanted, it's great karma. And speaking of Nick Sirianni, will he get fired? Probably not, because he made a Super Bowl last year. Was only 3 points away from winning it. But the Eagles are a team that they don't wait around. They're a franchise that doesn't wait around. They don't give you very many chances. And so for the Eagles to start 10-1, just to finish 11-6, lose 5 out of their last 6 games, and then lose in the first game and not even really put up a fight, yeah, there's going to be some conversations this offseason for the Eagles, for sure.
100%. And I think Jalen Hurts is, I mean, they'll keep him for sure. He's a cornerstone of that current team, but I mean, he's going to have to completely turn things around. I know he didn't have his top receiver, but had him, even in that stretch of games where they weren't winning. So I think for the Eagles, it's a Cowboy situation, sort of. And I think a lot of America's happy about this, because I think, a lot of people think the 2 worst fan bases are the Cowboys and the most annoying, not just fan bases, but annoying teams, right? Like, we saw what happened with Sirianni. We've seen Jerry Jones open his mouth a lot. Eagles and the Cowboys are both those teams, and I think a lot of people are happy to see them out. myself
I
included.
am. Just as an NFL fan, a lot of people feel the same way. So,
100%.
with that, let's move
Yeah.
on to our divisional round predictions. First game is going to be the Texans and the Ravens, and I'm conflicted. I really am, because I think the Ravens are looking like the easy Super Bowl favorite. They dominate great teams. They dominated the 49ers. They dominated the Dolphins. You know, they they show no mercy. They're a complete team all around, and it's going to be very, very tough to take them down. But look at what the Texans just did to the number one defense in the league. You can't take that lightly, because the Texans
Right.
are very capable of showing up this week and upsetting the Ravens. Not to mention, Lamar's only won one playoff game in his career. He started, 2018? So,
Right.
he's had a lot of experience. He only won one playoff game. I know he's injured a lot, and he's had his first full healthy season. You just hope he stays that way. But because he is injury prone, you can't rule that out as a factor too. Like, it's very possible he can get hurt, and the Ravens would be screwed. Because if he goes out, Texans will probably run away with the game.
100%. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games, and I mean, I know we'll talk about Packers, Niners in a minute too, and because it's a similar situation, right? You have these two young QBs against, some of the the two top teams in the NFL. So I think, right now, I mean, I am going to go with Ravens. I'll just give my prediction. I do think it's one of those things where, it's a frisky team, like you said, gets in the playoffs, kind of sneaks in, gets an easy division, title, and I don't know. I mean, we saw what C.J. Stroud did, and I wouldn't put the Browns and the Ravens in the same tier of football, but they're very close. I think, right? Especially this year in the same division, a very close division. But I don't know. I think the Ravens are going to win, but I won't be surprised if this is another situation where C.J. Stroud goes off and the Ravens don't have an answer, especially on a couple weeks rest. Resting their starters last week. So I don't know. Well, I just think it's like one of those things. Again, like you said, Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. He's been inexperienced in the NFL, but he's been hurt a lot. And PJ Stroud's kind of fresh. He's fresh legs. Has dealt with injuries this year, but he's determined. And I think this Texans team can make a run especially if they win tomorrow or this weekend. So I got the Ravens though. I do think they're going to win. I can't see them going down this early.
I have the Ravens too. I think most of America does. Ravens are favored by 7.5, which I think is generous. I do think this game is capable of being closer than that. Basically, Vegas is ruling out the Texans, but I think the Texans are frisky and that they're very capable of winning it if they show up and play a full, complete physical game.
100%.
So, you want to talk about it? It's Green Bay and San Francisco. I want to hear what you think about this one.
Well, I mean, I think on one hand, you have 49ers are coming off of a few weeks rest as well, having the bye week, having, most, if not all of the starters rest. I think a few of the guys played in week 18, but Brock Purdy, this is a huge game for him because,
Yeah.
he had great playoff success last year, unfortunately got hurt, and I think for the 49ers, it's like, they're on upset watch for sure. I mean, I'm not going to be like, it's going to be a, blowout just because that's what I said about Cowboys Packers probably, and look what happened. Us and the Cowboys are always getting grouped in the same category of football, and that's the elite teams of the NFC. And we saw what happened, and Jordan Love is, can win on the road. We saw that too. And, he's coming all the way to the Bay, and it's going to be a tough atmosphere there for sure. But I think the 49ers the rest is going to be used to their advantage. They're always a team that's been banged up. And I think having those few weeks off has been really, really beneficial. But at the same time, I mean, we saw what happened with Love. And he's a very, very scrappy player. And that whole team is very scrappy. Was ruled out, written off. The Lions are going to easily take that division. They still did win the division, but the Packers snuck their way in. And I think for the 49ers, they can't go down this easy, though. I mean, they're a team that's been so resilient all season. Yes, a few bad losses, but I think for them, playing NFC teams in particular, the 49ers have been nearly perfect. The only NFC team the 49ers lost to this year was the Vikings. Lost to the And ironically, the only teams the 49ers have lost to this year were the AFC North, the Bengals, Browns, and Ravens. So I think the 49ers are going to keep that NFC streak going. It is interesting though; they did lose to an NFC North opponent as well. Only lost to North opponents this year, I guess, which is kind of weird. But hopefully that superstition won't arise, and I think the 49ers are going to win by a touchdown, maybe a touchdown and a field goal, 10 points. I think it'll be a 2-score game or 3.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the 49ers got this one in the bag. And it's going to be a good game, not just for Brock Purdy, but for the whole team and the fan base, because every year they get to this point, they've got a key injury or two that's just really keeping them from getting to that final stage, especially last year when they just got whooped in the NFC Championship game because you're pretty much on a third string quarterback. If whoever was playing, I think it was, I don't remember who it was, but if they would have gotten hurt, then Christian McCaffrey would have had to come in and play quarterback. It was bad, and this is now that they're a healthy squad now, and so this is the time where the Niners need to come out and prove to everybody that they deserve to be here. They're like, hey, see, we can be dangerous when we're healthy. We can get over that hump when we're healthy. So, yeah. I think it was great to see Green Bay take out Dallas, but this is where their Cinderella run ends. I think San Fran's going to win it by a touchdown. Probably touchdown. But you never know. You never know. Because Brock Purdy, in my humble opinion, has not had to prove anything yet. Because he's had a great team around him in the 2 years that he's played. And I want to see him be challenged a little bit. I want to see what he's made of. Because he's got great players that can make plays around him where he doesn't have to necessarily do all the work. Now, of course, he's an upgrade from Jimmy Garoppolo because we saw Jimmy Garoppolo in the same system and they weren't able to win a Super Bowl. So, obviously, I think Brock Purdy is better than Jimmy Garoppolo. I just don't think he's really had to prove himself as much because he has that complete team around him.
Yeah, and think about it this way, too. I mean, Brock Purdy right now is on a very cheap rookie contract. He's getting one of the lowest paid guy, might be contender for one of the lowest paid rostered guys on the team. I think he makes less than $1 million. I mean, granted, endorsements and all that, but from the team itself, he's not getting paid very much. And the 49ers are a team that's in win now mode right now, right? You're not going to have Christian McCaffrey in his prime forever as a running back. You have Deebo Samuel who's peaking. You have Ayuk who's young. You have Trent Williams who's not going to be around forever. They don't win with this team, surrounding Brock Purdy. I don't say move on from Brock Purdy yet, but it's the type of thing where you're not binded to him forever. And I think that's a huge exaggeration considering it's just the playoffs. But I think if Brock Purdy turns out to be another Dak Prescott or a Carson Wentz type guy that can't really succeed in the playoffs, and it's for him. There must be what the point I'm trying to get is. He's a lot of pressure on the young guy to perform. It's basically like his playoff. Yes, last year was his playoff debut. This year it's been his playoff debut where he's actually been the starting QB the whole season, and it's been intended for. Last year he sort of just came in and somehow played good, whereas now it's he's known that he's going to make it to this point all year. The 49ers had that number 1 seed on lock for a few weeks, and it's been a goal of theirs to get back to the bowl. So I don't know. We'll see. The 49ers have a good history of playing the Packers. Obviously, they beat them, in 2020 to get to the Super Bowl, and then of course a few years ago to, in a very chilly Green Bay, to advance in the playoffs as well. So I think the 49ers will win, but it's a new Green Bay squad. It's not Aaron Rodgers anymore. It's a new look Jordan Love team that's very dangerous, of course.
Of course, yeah. Well, the Niners are heavy favorites to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl this year, which is fair. I mean, who are they competing with? It's Green Bay, Tampa, and Detroit. I mean, those teams are good. I don't think they're great, but I think they're good, and they deserve to be where they're at now. But I don't see any of those three teams being capable of making a Super Bowl for the NFC side. I think the 49ers are the runaway favorites for the NFC this year, obviously. But, again, Brock Purdy's going to have to prove himself. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And as far as the contract thing goes, I don't even know how he's living in California right now with his rookie deal. But it's one of those things where if he doesn't make a Super Bowl, then I think the Niners are probably gonna have to reconsider a long-term deal with him. Like if I were the if he doesn't at least get to the Super Bowl this year when he has his easiest path, granted no injuries happen, then I would say maybe sign him to a 2-3 year extension. Don't give him anything long term. Give him a few more years to try and get back to a Super Bowl, maybe win one. And if he stays consistent, then yeah, make him earn that long term contract. But if he doesn't make a Super Bowl this year, I think they got to consider what they're willing to pay him in the offseason.
Yeah, I love Brock, but I agree. I mean, the games that the 49ers have lost this year, with the exception of the Cleveland game, it's been Brock Purdy's fault. So I think, you saw the Vikings game, he threw a few late interceptions. I don't know how we didn't beat the Vikings, but that's a whole other story. And then, of course, the Ravens, right? I mean, he threw 4 interceptions.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. You just can't do that, especially in a playoff-type game. I know it wasn't the playoffs, but it's a huge moment for him. And, yeah, the 49ers schedule was, I'd say, on the easier side, but not a cakewalk, and he was very good. But, I mean, a lot of losses to, 4 losses to, very good teams, with the exception of the Vikings. So, we'll see. I think, it's definitely a prove it thing, and I think they're going to get the win, but I think thinking long term, it's like they got to get to the Super Bowl, especially with the best running back in the NFL, some of the best defensive players in the NFL, and receiving core that's unstoppable, not to mention George Kittle and an offensive line that's been great all year.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you on Saturday. We move on to the Sunday slate, and we've got the Bucs and the Lions, and I think this one's going to be fun. I think it's going to be close. Because if the Bucs team that showed up against the Eagles shows up against the Lions might be in for a rough night. But if you get the Bucs team that struggled in a few games towards the end of the regular season this year, then the Lions are capable of running away with the win. So it's going to be a really interesting game, and I really, really want Tampa to be competitive in this because, I like seeing my city on the map. I know I'm not a Bucs fan, but I love the energy that the Bucs bring to the city when they are competitive. I'll tell you, I went to a sports bar last night in the area to watch the game, and the energy was amazing. It was fun. It was packed with Bucs fans. Obviously, I showed up in my Chiefs jersey, but besides the point, tons of Bucs fans. They were loud. The energy was great, and I was just happy for them, and I'm happy for the city to be at this point and to upset the Eagles and to get against the Lions. And I've been saying all year, ever since the Lions narrowly beat the Chiefs because of Kadarius Toney dropping some crucial passes, they're an overrated team. They are. I really believe that. I don't think they're going to be in the Super Bowl. I don't think it's possible for them to get to the Super Bowl. I think it's very realistic that Tampa even beats them. And I'm tempted to pick Tampa as the upset because let's look at who they just beat at home. The Rams. And the Rams are good. They have a great offensive core. But for the most part of the season, the Rams were kind of on and off, a wishy-washy team. You couldn't really tell what you were going to get with them. And they competed with the Rams to the very end. So it's really, this one's probably the hardest game for me to predict because I really see this one going either way. But I want to see the Baker Mayfield story continue. I want to see the Bucs win, but unfortunately I don't think it's going to happen. But I do think if they show up the way they showed up against the Eagles, it's very possible. But just to play it safe, I have to pick the Lions in this game.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't see the Lions as like a fraudulent team. Like I wouldn't go that far, but I do agree with you. I think they're a team that's just not quite there yet. And it's weird to say that about a team that has a veteran QB, guy who's been in the league for 8 years, 9 years, something like that. Same draft as Dak Prescott, 2016, Jared Goff. But I think for them, it's the type of thing where they're, a team that's an experienced team that is kind of just riding high off momentum, adrenaline. And I know they got a good win over LA. But like you said, that call doesn't go their way. Who knows what happens? And I don't playing the hypothetical game, especially with refs, but I do think that for the Lions, it's sort of the thing where they're kind of building towards the future. And I think they're a very, very good team. And I think that this is going to be a very close game. It's going to be hard to predict as well. I want to go with the Bucs though. I want to pick the Bucs. I think that Todd Bowles, Baker has, they have something special going on right now, and the scrappiness of this Bucs team. I believe the game will be in Detroit, so that's going to be tough for them. But they're a team that's overcome adversity before. I didn't think that they were going to make the playoffs, and here they are. The team that's been cruising through, and Baker Mayfield has been resilient, looking like the QB he was a few years ago in Cleveland and winning. And so I got the Bucks. I think it's gonna be a very close game though. I think it's gonna be like kind of low scoring, maybe like 21-17. I guess it's not low scoring, but nothing like in the 30s or 40s. I think 21-17, something like that. Maybe a last minute drive by Baker. I mean, we've seen him do that before, where he wins in the final moments. But Detroit's a team that really, to me, is almost there, almost to the top, especially now in an NFC bracket that looks pretty weak. But I just don't think that it's going to happen. If the Lions do win, though, I think they could upset San Francisco. I do think that could happen, especially if they win convincingly. But we'll see what happens. That's a whole other. We'll be talking about that next week. So, yeah.
Of course. Yeah, and who knows? Maybe it'll be a Packers versus Bucks NFC Championship, which would be the most what the hell just happened final two of that conference of all time. Because, I mean, nobody predicted any of these teams to do anything this year. But here they are in the final 8. So, congrats to them, seriously. But, no, I love the pick. I do hope the Bucks win. Unfortunately, I do think right now it's the Lions. I agree with you that it's not their time yet. They're almost there. They're a key piece or two away, but they've definitely got championship caliber players on their team. Like they're built around players that can get you there. You're just missing a few key pieces, I think. But I do hope Tampa wins, and I do think it's the Lions' little 15 seconds of fame right now. I think they will get to the conference championship. So I got that one, and then we move on to the last game.
Pick.
Yeah, it's the Chiefs and the Bills. And chance I might go to this one, actually. We'll have to wait and see, but I've never been to Buffalo. I want to see it. Chance I might go to that, so I'd have a vlog out for that for sure. But listen, man, this one's going to be fun because, A, it's the first time ever that Mahomes has to play a road playoff game. So I'm excited for that. And B, this might be the first time ever that the Chiefs are the underdogs in a playoff game. I think they're underdogs. And the Bills are favored by 3. So I'd love to see it. The Chiefs played the Bills. I went to that game earlier this year. And the Chiefs were literally a half foot away from winning that game. If Kadarius Toney wasn't offsides by a half foot, the Chiefs win that game. And it was another one of those games where they struggled to get the offense going. They were shooting themselves in the foot with penalties. And they couldn't score once they were in the red zone. If they just clean up these simple things, they can handle the Bills. They really can. And I think it helps the Chiefs that the Bills have already beaten us this year. It gives us that extra motivation to want to beat them a second time around. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, this is going to be the 7th time they've met up, including playoffs. They're 3-3 against each other. The Chiefs have both the playoff wins, but the Bills, it's weird because every time the Chiefs play the Bills win in the regular season, the Chiefs win in the playoffs. That's just the way it works. Mahomes has beaten Allen in the regular season one time. It was 2020, and that was the same year that we crushed them in the conference championship. And the Bills were good. They weren't there yet, but I don't know. I like it. I like the matchup. I'll take the Bills over the Texans, honestly. I would rather the Chiefs play the Bills on the road than at home versus the Texans, and I mean that. Because the Texans are a frisky team. They put up a lot of points this last week. And the Bills, I think they're wishy-washy. Josh Allen's got to be at the top of his game. He can't make stupid decisions like he typically does. I have the Chiefs winning this one. I really do. I've been critical all year of the Chiefs. This is one of the worst. This is one of the worst seasons we've had under Mahomes. They just shoot themselves in the foot every week with stupid penalties, drop passes during interceptions, running the wrong routes, not creating separation, not being able to get open. Their offenses look terrible, but they haven't lost a game this year when they score 21 or more points. So that's the magic number. This Chiefs defense, this is a championship defense. If our offense shoots themselves in the foot, the defense picks it up and they step in and win us the game. That's what this Chiefs team has been built around this year, is the defense. For the first time in Mahomes' career, our team has been a defensive team that wins us games, not offensive. And so I think if the Chiefs score 21 points, that's all it's going to take. Because I think our defense is very capable of holding the Bills to less than 20. Because look at what they just did to the Dolphins. I know Tua's not the greatest quarterback, but I mean, this is a team with Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, David Achane, Tyreek Hill. This is an electric offense that the Chiefs held to 7 points in the wild card round. 0 if Tyreek Hill didn't make it a crazy adjustment and catch a bad pass from Tua. So, it's a good Chiefs defense. You can make an argument they're the best defense in the league this year. They're definitely top 3. And so this could be the difference in this game. I think the defense can get it done. I think the Chiefs are going to win.
I think the defense is great, like you said. And we go back to that prior matchup because that's kind of what we did last week, looking at the prior matchups between the matchups and in the playoffs, sorry. Right. And looking at that Bills game from, back in December, the Bills really did not play that good in the second half. They had 2 field goals. That's all. They mustered just 6 points together. Yes, the Chiefs only had 10, but Kadarius Toney, like you said, doesn't make that stupid play. You win that game. They'll have 17. Right. And so that second half dominance, especially on defense by Kansas City, is what, for me, gives them the edge here, especially because, it's so hard, as you know, to beat a team twice in a season, especially a non-divisional opponent that you don't necessarily study for as much, right? So I think for the Chiefs, I have them winning as well. I think it's crazy that it's Mahomes' first road playoff game, and I didn't know that. I mean, technically, the Super Bowl against the Bucs was kind of a road playoff game, even though it was kind of a COVID year with not many fans at site. That neutral site. Yeah. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to Josh Allen versus Mahomes, who has the better game, because we both know that the Chiefs' receiving core has been iffy this year, to say the least. I mean, Rashee Rice is going to have to have a great game, and for the Bills, yes, the receiving core is much better than the Chiefs, but has also kind of been up and down. I mean, yes, they beat Pittsburgh pretty handily, but really, I mean, like you said, Stephon Diggs didn't really play that good. I don't think Gabe Davis played very good. Dalton Kincaid was really the only receiver that put together an all right game. So I think it's going to be the quarterback play, and then, of course, just that receiving core, just which team can have a guy make a big play, a splashy play to, seal the deal. And I think it's going to be the Chiefs. Buffalo, it's very hard to win there, of course, too. And I know the Chiefs, I don't know what's the Chiefs' record in Buffalo. I don't know that. I know they've never played them there in the playoffs, but I think for the Bills, it's just,
between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, I think the Chiefs have only played in Buffalo, which is weird, one time, and it was that COVID year when we beat them pretty handily.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, that's no fans too, so it's hard to tell. But I don't think that'll have a huge. I mean, the weather is more or less similar. I don't know. I'm in a warm weather place, so I don't know how much different that feels. But I know the weather in Arrowhead and Highmark Stadium is very similar, probably, and it's just very cold. So it's not one of those things where it's the Dolphins mustering their way in and waddling into a cold place that they can't handle. But I think it comes down to experience, and I have the Chiefs. I think they have more experience. Well, that's another thing I wanted to talk about was the weather, because historically, when games are that cold and that brutal, you see both teams' game plan is just run the damn ball all game long. The Chiefs did the opposite. They came out and threw. I said last week I think it's going to be a Pacheco game. He's going to have multiple touchdowns. Yeah. It's going to be a running game for both sides. No, the Chiefs came out and they threw the ball a lot. So, yeah, I mean, this is a Chiefs team that's they're not scared of the cold weather. And I was right. Of all the Allen and Mahomes matchups, weirdly, they've only been at Buffalo one other time, and it was that COVID year when the Chiefs won. It was 26-17 final. But for whatever odd reason, they always come to Kansas City, so it'll be a nice change of scenery. I think the Chiefs love. I know Mahomes is excited because there's all that noise every year of, I wonder how he'd be on the road. He's never had to play a road playoff game. Well, now he gets that opportunity. You know he's going to be damn motivated to go out and win that game. So, especially against a team that he knows he should have beat the last time they played earlier this season. So it's going to be a fun game, I think, and I do think the Chiefs win. I can't say I disagree. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like you can't really count the Chiefs out, at least before the AFC Championship in the Mahomes era, right? At this point, I mean, history says
Yeah, he's
He'll make
never
it that
not
far
made
at
it to the
least,
AFC
right?
Championship, and every year he started, which is just insane.
And I think the tough thing too is like if they do make it, which I won't get that far ahead. You're gonna have to probably play in Baltimore, but we'll see what happens. That'll be next week's video. So yeah, I got the Chiefs too. I just think it's one of those things that's like the history says that it's the same thing with the Packers and the Niners, right? It's just like
Yeah,
history says one team's gonna win, and I'm not gonna deny history. So
yeah.
yeah, here we go.
Well, my man, great week, great video with you. I'm sure we'll talk
Yeah.
again next week, but it's always nice talking to you, doing these videos. It's going
Oh
to be an
yeah,
exciting
man.
weekend. It's going to be an exciting weekend of football. Can't wait to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, me too, man. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, we'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace out.